What is up? It is your boy Mr. Uy here, coming to you live and direct from our current classroom, time traveling from yesterday to give you your message for today. Realize that I am out because I'm with my son because he got his 1 year shots. Hopefully he didn't get too sick and he is doing well enough with me there. So I'm probably currently still comforting my son, but give us some positive ions and hopefully we can make it through the weekend. This video is created for one purpose and one purpose only, to make sure that you guys understand what to do in my absence to handle some business and to make sure that you're being as respectful and earning that trust that I have in each and every single one of you to be successful even though I'm not there. So let's take a look at what you have to accomplish and let's make sure that we are checking things off of our list as the period goes on. So let's take a look. All right, so your to-do list for the period is pretty straightforward. Number one, watch this video. So good job, you're already doing and completing number one. Number two, take notes. The sub will hand these out to you guys, hopefully at the beginning of the period, and it's your job to make sure that you're filling in those notes just as if I was there giving the lesson. Thirdly, participate in the Pear Deck because it is open for you on student pace mode for you to go back and forth to still show me that you're participating in those warm-ups. Fourth, update your planners. Make sure that you're ready for the weekend, knowing when things are going to be due and what you still have to accomplish as the weekend starts. And last but not least, using that individual work time to complete any skills practices or project work that you might have for any of those things that we have in class. So this is your to-do list for the day. Let's start plugging away at accomplishing these goals. As I said before, you should go join the Pear Deck. The link is up just like a normal day, and it is on student pace mode for you to go back and forth to any slide that you need to, especially these beginning slides for those participation points. So let's see what our warm-ups are for today, and hopefully you can go into the Pear Deck, find the slides, and participate. Now, before we get into it, I want to make sure that you understand what the end of our week is going to look like so that you can organize your thoughts appropriately for what you need to accomplish. All right, as you can see, we've got our 2 weeks at a glance here. We've been looking at this all week, and it looks like we're going to hit our target for this week for sure. Today, we're focusing on the percent increase and decrease, which is the final skill before we start preparing for the unit test. Please remember that there is that project due tonight at midnight. Part 2 of the life project is indeed due tonight at midnight, so make sure that you're aware of that for sure. Moving forward, don't forget that we've got a unit test coming up as well. What that means is any notes that you're taking now or any notes that you've taken in the past are all available for you to use on the unit test this coming block. So make sure that you have your mind right and make sure that you are understanding the concepts or reaching out for help if you need a little extra support. As we move forward, this is your to-do list for this week. So as you can see at the very top, Life Project Research Part 2 is due tonight by midnight, as well as the programming on the Google Sheets. Don't forget that you don't need to actually write the program if you don't want to. You can just organize your data in a very efficient way so that you can take those screenshots and put them into Part 2 of your research. Also, you guys received yesterday during our notes the skills practice for percent applications. That's the discounts and sales tax. Don't forget that you don't have to turn that in today. That's actually something that's due Monday at midnight when I see you guys again next week. Now it's time to warm up our brain. So make sure that you log into the Pear Deck that's self-paced and move forward to the slides that have the warm-ups on them. Our first warm-up requires you to spot 10 differences. Pause the video here, move over to the Pear Deck, and see if you can spot all 10 differences. Pause the video now and go do the warm-up. All right, second warm-up requires you to continue to warm up your skills of observation by looking at a visual pattern. Take a moment, pause the video, and make sure that you put your answer into the box for the warm-up on the Pear Deck. Pause the video and see if you can find the pattern. Also, make a prediction as to what would come next if you have the right pattern. All right, so this brings us to our agenda for today. Today we're focusing primarily on one final concept for the unit, and that is percent change. I also want to make sure that you guys are set up for success as you finish up the week and looking ahead or getting ahead on some work that's not due this week, but that is due next week, as well as some individual work time to focus your energy on whatever you need to finish as the week ends. So let's keep on going so we can handle some business. Now, the next slides are the same slides that we went over at the beginning of the presentation, so you can go ahead and fast forward through these slides just so that you understand exactly what you need to expect as you're moving forward as you end the week. All right, our next major task is making sure that we end our week with the same mindset talks that we started with. Remember that our mindset for this week was always about continuing to push forward, making sure that we understand that one of the most difficult things is to work hard for something and to keep going with that hard work. To make sure that you understand that your journey is not done yet, to keep pushing forward and to keep working hard, because we know that sustained effort over time will hopefully lead us to successful results. What I want to show you is a quick video of someone who definitely uses that idea of pushing forward and is someone that can definitely help inspire you with the type of work that he puts into his craft every single day. Now take a moment, pause the video here so you can go to the Pear Deck and click on the YouTube link and watch the video before you move forward. All right, hopefully you enjoyed that little short piece of inspiration that'll help motivate you as you move forward in our notes for today. So what we need to do now is move on in our unit. All right, with our brains warmed up and our mindsets right, let's take a look at the final task for our unit, and that's moving on to this last topic that we need to cover. So please make sure that you go grab those note supplies. Very important that you have those because again, you can use them for the test this coming block, and it has a skills practice on the back that you're going to need to focus your energy on to maybe get ahead on some work for next week. So take a moment, pause the video here, make sure that you've got a pencil, make sure that you've got those notes, and go ahead and press play when you're ready to get started. All right, so our math focus for today is something called percent increase and decrease. So in the first box where it asks what is the percent change, it realistically is just the amount by which two values have changed over time. And changing over time is something that's going to be a theme for us as we push forward into our unit next. It gives us a sense of how much things change by putting a percentile value to it, and percent changes can be increases or decreases. So pause the video here, make sure that you fill in your box that says what is percent change, and then press play when you're ready to move forward. All right, so problem type 1 is calculating this thing called percent change. So looking at the box that says essential skill number 1, calculating percent change, here are the steps that you need to be familiar with. So the steps for calculating percent increase or decrease, number 1 is deciding whether or not the numbers are increasing or decreasing. That should be a pretty simple step because all you need to see is whether or not the value of the numbers are going up or going down. The second step is finding the difference. That means that you're subtracting those two numbers from one another. And step 3 is to divide that difference by the original to find a percent. So just pause the video here so you can fill in the essential skill box with those 3 steps. And then let's take a look at some examples so that you guys can get familiar and hopefully work your way towards mastery on a topic that will be represented on the unit test. All right, so example number 1, we see that we've got two numbers. Originally, the number started at 45, and the final number ended up being 50. What we need to do first is decide whether or not the numbers are increasing or decreasing. So first off, I can definitely see that we've got a percent increase. So I'm going to do nothing more, nothing less than the right word, increase here. The second thing that I need to do is find the difference between these two numbers. So taking 50 and subtracting from it 45, I know that the difference is 5. Second step, done. Third step, all I need to do is divide the original by the original to find the percent. So I'm going to take that difference 5 and I'm going to divide it by 45 to find the percentage. Considering that calculators are now active, all I need to do now is literally in my particular calculator is take this division problem and divide. When I do divide, I'm going to get a decimal. Let's see what decimal we get here. So again, looking at my calculator, this is something that you guys should be doing as well. Whether you're using your phone or whether you're using your Chromebook, it doesn't matter to me as long as you're utilizing the calculator effectively. Don't forget garbage in, garbage out when it comes to a calculator. So if I take 5 and I divide by 45, I'm going to get a repeating decimal that looks like this, 0 0.11111 repeating. Now, how does this work for a percentage? Remember that we can change a decimal to a percent by doing nothing more, nothing less than moving the decimal 2 places to the right. So this actually is equal to about 11% increase. So from this first example, the biggest thing that you should see is that there isn't anything spectacular going on mathematically. It really is just a conceptual understanding of how we can represent these increases or decreases utilizing these things called percents. So let's take a look at the next example and let's get good at this. Moving on to example number 2, I see that I have 64.7 and from there it changed to 38. That tells me, step 1, that it is a decrease. So step 1's done. Step 2, all I need to do is find the difference. So again, I'm looking for the difference between these two numbers. Using a calculator is definitely important, but don't forget garbage in, garbage out. So I'm going to take 64.7 and subtract from it 38. Finding the difference there, I'm going to get, using my calculator, so 64.7 minus 38 gives me a total of 26.7. So 26.7. Cool. Now, with this 26.7, all I have to do now is divide by the original. And don't forget you divide by the original. So 26.7 divided by 64.7 is going to give me another decimal. So dividing those two things, so 26.7 divided by 64.7 gives me approximately 0.4126. Now, it's a rule of thumb here to round to 4 decimal places because we know that we're going to move the decimal point 2 places over. So this is a great way to get practice in for the rounding rules. So what this is as a percentage is 41.27%, and we see that it is a decrease. Bada bing, bada boom. Problem number 2 is done, and hopefully you're starting to see the pattern here so that you can replicate it for the final 2 examples. All right, next example I want you to give a try. Pause the video here, write down the problem, and see if you can work your way through it from beginning to end. Then hit play when you're ready to check your answer. So pause the video and give it a shot. All right, if you pause the video, here are your steps. Step number 1, we look at whether or not it's increasing or decreasing. Looks to me like it's decreasing. Step number 2, we find the difference. I take 125 and I subtract from it 84. Using my calculator, I get 41 as my difference. With this difference now, my third and final step is dividing that difference, 41, by the original amount, which was 125. And in this case, I get a grand total of, so 41 divided by 125 gives me 0.328. For this one, I don't need to round because I get a terminating decimal here, which is equal to 32.8% decrease. Hopefully you agree with this answer because that's what you should get. This is definitely something you'll see on the test. Let's do one final one and let's see if you got this on lock. All right, last example, same thing as before. Pause the video before you look at the answer. Write it down in your example 4 box. See if you can work through it yourself and check your answer when you're ready to check it. So pause the video now and try it yourself. All right, if you paused it, here is the answer that you should have gotten. So number 1, I can see that from 87 to 254, that is an increase. Step 1 done. Step 2, I need to find the difference. In this case, I'm going to subtract 254 minus 87 to find the difference between these two numbers. 254 minus 87 gives me a grand total of 167. Now the third and final step, I take that difference, 167, and I'm going to divide it by 87. Now in this particular example, we're going to get a strange number, but it makes sense when we look at it in context. So 167 divided by 87 actually gives me a number over 1. So it gives me 1.9195. which translates to a percentage of 191.95% increase. Now that increase makes sense in context because we see that jumping from 87 to 254 is a substantial increase. So it's almost a 200% increase because it's almost double that amount or triple that amount that I originally started with. So this is definitely something that makes sense in context. So trust the process and make sure that you're following the steps. Even though the numbers might look different, hopefully you understand in context that the final answer should make sense. So there's example number 4. Let's keep on going. Now, the only other thing that we have to do is apply these situations to real life examples. The steps don't change, but all that changes is the way that we look at these problems and a way that we use to calculate these problems and solve them in context. So let's take a look at 3 real life examples and let's take a look. All right, so the real life problem type 1 deals with money again, and it's finding the percentage given the original price and a sales price. So in this instance, finding something called the discount rate or the percentage off is dedicated in 3 steps. Number 1, subtracting the final sales price from the original. Step 2, dividing the answer from step 1 by the original price. And step 3, moving the decimal 2 places to the right to create that percentage. Seems pretty similar as the ones up above. The only difference is that now we're dealing with these numbers in context. So pause the video here so that you can write down these steps, and then let's take a look at our 3 examples. All right, example number 1 says that skis at a sports store near Snow Summit are on sale for $476. If the original price was $560, what discount rate does this represent? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to write this in context. I know that the original, so I'm just going to put the word original, cost $560, and what it changed to for the sale is $476. Now, using the same steps as before, I know I see a decrease, so the first step here, I can identify it as a decrease. The second step is making sure that you subtract, so taking 560 and subtracting from it to find the difference, 476. Using my handy dandy calculator again, I should get an answer that I know what to do with. So 560 minus 476 gives me a grand total of 84. With this 84 in the last and final step, I divide that by my original price that these skis cost, which is 560. 84 divided by 560 on my calculator gives me 0.15. So a nice neat decimal for this one, which translates to a 15% discount for this problem. So you can see that we use the same steps as the problems before. The only difference is that now we have context to what we're doing, and it applies to money in this way. So pause the video here so that you can show your work in that box, and let's move on to our final 2 examples. All right, here's example number 2. Let's take some training wheels off, pause the video here, and see if you can work your way through this problem. Pause the video before you check your work. All right, so if you're checking your work, hopefully your work looks something like this. The original is $450, and the sales price is $382.50. Knowing this, I can see that there's a discount, which means it's a decrease. So the first thing I need to do is find the difference. So 450 minus 382.50 is going to give me a number for my calculator that hopefully you guys agree with, which is, so let's do 450 minus 382.50. That gives me $67.50. With this number now, I'm going to divide it by the original amount. So 67.50 divided by 450 is going to give me a particular decimal, aka a percent. So 67.50 divided by 450 gives me a grand total of 0.15. Illuminati confirmed. So we've got 15% discount once again for this example. So hopefully this is starting to become easier and easier because again, you should see that the steps do not change. The only thing that changes is the context of the problem. One final one, and then you're ready to start your skills practice. All right, last example. Give this one a shot before you look at the answer. Pause the video now and give it a shot. All right, so if you pause the video, here's the work that you should have shown. I know that it originally started at $350, so I need to find the difference between the discount, the sales price, and the original. $350 minus $273, minus $273, so $350 minus $273 gives me a grand total of $77. With that difference, I know I'm going to divide by my original amount, which is $350. 77 divided by 350 gives me a grand total of 0.22, which translates to a 22% discount in this particular example. Count. Cool. Discount. So hopefully you agree with that answer, and hopefully you guys are ready to move on to your skills practice. So let's take a look at how you're going to end your period. All right, so congratulations, we are officially done with the unit. What that means is that we're ready to test, and our test is next week on block. So whether that's Tuesday or Wednesday for you, realize that we got to start preparing to be ready to take that test. Now, our skills practice on the back of your notes is something that isn't due until block period next week. So again, you've got some time to get ahead on some assignments that aren't technically due until next week. Let's make sure that we're showing our work appropriately too. So on the next slide, I want to show you an example of how to show your work. All right, so on the back of your notes, you see that you've got this skills practice. Please make sure that you're showing your work appropriately to get full credit. Now again, right at the very top when this is due, this isn't due today, it's not due on Monday, it's due block. So you've got a few days to get prepared, and it's great practice for you to make sure that you're ready for the test, at least for these types of problems. So for number one, I'll show you the work that I would show. I know that it's going to be a decrease, so that's step number one. So decrease. Step number two is finding the difference. So I take 100 and I subtract it from 59, which gives me a grand total of 41. And then step three, using my calculator, I divide 41 by my original amount, 100, which gives me 0.41, which is a 41% decrease. So there is my particular work that I would show for example number one. Please make sure that you understand that with the calculator function being available for us, we still do need to show our work in some way, and that is setting up the problem for your calculator to take the rest over. So this is how you would show your work. This is now in your court to decide when you want to finish. This is great practice to start getting prepared, and hopefully you have some time at the end of the period to get some good chunk of this work done. All right, so last guided task of the day is just updating your planner so that you're ready for the next week and you're ready to see whether or not you've accomplished your goals for the end of this week. Remember that using your planner is just a way to stay organized and hopefully is a great way for you not to forget anything as the week goes on. So looking at our planners, let's turn to page 19. So it's actually not 18, we're on page 19 right now. So I'm crossing out 18 and writing 19. And on Friday's agenda, please write down anything that you have left to finish. So this officially is your 4 required assignments that will be due at different times. So make sure you take note of the due dates. Pause the video here and update your planner for things that you still need to finish. Again, when you update your planners, you don't have to write down things that you've already finished, especially if you've already finished, like, for instance, Life Project Part 2, you don't have to write it down because you don't have to worry about it. But you should be writing down the skills practices because those things are due next week and you could get ahead by writing it down in your planner. So pause the video now and update your planners. All right, so this brings you to your independent work time. Please make sure that you understand that the work time expectations are all about making sure that you focus on your work, making sure that you're not distracting to those around you, and making sure that you're productive with your use of time in class. Obviously, keep the noise level down. You can listen to your own music since you've already got your earphones plugged in. Just make sure that you are being respectful to the sub and that you are holding it down in there even though I am not there. So, With this being said, the final thing that I want to leave you is our to-do list, so you can pause the video here if you still need this, as well as some helpful hints for success, which are staying organized, using your planner, whatever you have, your binder, making sure that you're not forgetting any major details, using your time wisely by not procrastinating, and hopefully asking questions to me or to the sub if you have them during the period. So this leaves you with your final slide of the day. So I'm going to leave this slide up. You guys can go ahead and get started on whatever you want to finish for the remainder of the period. Thank you guys so much for listening in. You guys rock, and I'll see you guys on Monday as we start preparing for our unit test. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Peace.